I took a trip to my hometown a couple of days ago, and of course, when you do that, you're going to encounter some groups of people, and one of those interesting groups of people are people that you went to school with. And depending on what they did with their life, they could be looking at you and thinking that you are so high up there as compared to them. And I think that thing repeats itself over and over again. You know, life is interesting in such a way that we start together. Sometimes we do start life together, and maybe we're given the opportunities together, the same opportunities together. And how we turn those opportunities around, or how we chart our own lives or take our own courses, differs one person from another. The question we're answering in these episodes is this: what happens when you see someone that you were with together doing much more than you are, having much more contribution, much more impact than you are having in life? What happens to you? What goes on in your psyche? What goes on in your mind? You see, that case is always going to be there, but how do we deal with it? Listen to this.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
So let me start by saying that not everyone's life is supposed to be like someone else's. But there's one thing that we cannot argue with. There is the aspect of potential. You can see that your potential maybe has not been fulfilled the way it was supposed to be fulfilled, especially when you take a look at someone else who is doing much more than you are. And let me say this again, we are not comparing here. But at the end of the day, you cannot fail to see the difference between someone who is doing things and you. There's basically that. We are not competing. We can learn one from another, but life was not meant for us to compete. Those are 3 points that I've just made. That number one, your end result is not supposed to be like mine. But at the end of the day, number two, you cannot fault, you cannot fail to see that there was need for someone's potential to be expanded and exploded and expanded and deployed. And then at the end of the day, number three, we are not in this world necessarily to compete. However, we can never fail to see the differences that we are having in life. And depending on what we see, or depending on how we react to those differences we see, that is how our lives are going to, take a turn for the best or for the worst, and so on and so forth. So I was talking about Mike Tyson in 2017 in one of my articles on the blog. At that moment in time, Floyd Money Mayweather was going up against this man called Conor McGregor in an unprecedented boxing matchup that had been hyped much like the Rumble in the Jungle some time back between Muhammad Ali and I forgot the other guy's name. Oh, ouch. Anyway, and at that point in time, my reflection came on this man called Iron Mike Tyson, because Tyson was a big-time athlete in his heydays, and he messed up and so on. And so I asked myself this question: what goes on in Iron Mike Tyson's mind when he sees Floyd Money Mayweather 49 bouts unbeaten? And by the way, he fought and he won. It was 50 bouts unbeaten by the time he was retiring. 50-0. 50 fights and he has lost none. So I was asking myself, what is going on in Mike Tyson's mind when he considers this guy? And we can talk about Mike Tyson and all those guys. It's safe for us to say that. But where the rubber meets the road is when we talk about ourselves. Like I said, I went to the village and some people can compare you with others. You can compare yourself with others. You go to the village and you find that a kid who was 5 classes behind you has built a magnificent home and you have none. You find that probably if it's flipped the other way, other guys who are in the village are looking at you and they're saying, you're going places, and they are stuck in the village. What goes on in their minds when they see you? What goes in your mind when you see the others who are progressing and you are not? See, chances are that you might be having a sense of massive regrets. Those are things that are normally going on in our minds. Sometimes you're having massive regrets on the chances that you could have taken and you didn't. Massive regrets on the messes that you went through, the things that you arbitrarily did to spoil your future, to spoil your life. Chances are that you could be thinking about what could you have done better, what could have become better of the life that you're given. Chances are that you might be thinking of the moments you wasted, the opportunities that came to you and you just wasted them. And probably you might be thinking of the luck that the other people had and you didn't have. Many thoughts could actually be going on in your mind, and chances are that you could be thinking of the legacy that you might have had, might even have surpassed what other guys are having at the moment. If things could have gone according to plan, if it could have just been linear and things would just been okay. But here we are. You are in this moment, in this time. And probably, by the way, if you see other guys who are progressing, or maybe if other guys are seeing you and you're progressing, it should be good news, because every time you get this kind of feedback where there are hints of regret, where there are hints of massive things that, this could have been happening, this could have happened, and so on, it is feedback that is telling you that there is an ideal that was not reached. And if you're careful enough, that ideal could have been reached or could still be attained. You know why? Because you and I are not dead. Yes, we are not competing with other people. Yes, they are running their own races. But every time that feedback comes into your spirit, it is communicating something to you that you are not dead. There's something, there's something that you can do. And that's what I want us to discuss in these episodes going forward. What can we do? What can we do to alter the situation that we find ourselves in when we consider other people's races and we see that they are much ahead, they are doing much better? Of course, we are not going to do exactly what they are doing, but we can learn from what they are doing. You are in high school with a guy, he's now working at Microsoft, and you are quote-unquote hustling somewhere. That's feedback, alright? You are not supposed to be at Microsoft also. Maybe you shouldn't even be at Microsoft, but what can you learn? What is your heart telling you? I am really belaboring this because I want us not to look at this from a negative angle. I want us to take this from a positive angle. That it is possible to learn one or two things from those ones who are doing wonders in the world, and they are actually our peers. Or better yet, they are those ones who are below us. We were ahead of them, and now they are doing great stuff. I was at high school with a guy. He was 1 year below me. I was 1 year ahead of him, and he's now a managing director at a particular big-time corporation, and he's doing wonders. Am I feeling left behind? Not necessarily. I'm looking at it from the angle of potential. That is his potential. That is what he's doing with the opportunities that have come in his life. But can I be inspired? Finally I got the word. Can I be inspired enough to do something about my life because of what I've seen in other in another person's life. To run my own race, yes, but to be inspired by what someone else has done in their own race. When all these feelings of failure, regrets, having wasted our time, they come flooding into our thoughts like an incessant waterfall, that's a problem. If we look at those feelings and we look at them from a negative angle and they're just bashing us, and we're not looking at it from an angle of inspiration, there is a problem there. We realize that life is presenting us with two major options, and I'm going to discuss those things later on in these episodes that are succeeding. There are two major options that come to our minds when push comes to shove. In fact, when all is said and done, life always gives us two options. Option number one, you draw a line in the sand and stand up to be counted and make the most of what remains of your life. That's option number one. It is available for everyone who is breathing. For everyone who is alive right now, it's available. The option is available. You can draw a line in the sand. I'll never forget the day that I watched a particular movie. I've forgotten this movie. There's a team that was being walloped. I mean, they were just being incredibly walloped, like it was pathetic. And during the halftime, they had a team talk and they made a decision. They said, forget about the halftime. I mean, forget about the first half. It is gone. We cannot do nothing about the first half. But let us draw a line in the sand and let us go and do something that matters. Let us do our own game, play our own game. In this game, we have lost. I mean, there's no way we're going to have a comeback and win, but we have lost. But let us play the best second half ever. I don't remember the movie, the title of the movie, and that's what they did. They actually drew a scoreboard and so on and so forth, and they said this is what's gonna happen in this second half. And in the second half, they did their absolute best. The other team that was walloping them were shocked that these guys they are lost. They have lost, but they are happy. They are high-fiving each other every time they make a point and so on. Those guys in the second half, they outdid themselves and they went home happy. Of course, they lost the match, the entire match, but they went home happy. See, that's what we can do with our lives when we come to realize that there are some guys who are doing some things better and we're getting feelings of shame, feelings of embarrassment, feelings of regret, feelings like we wasted our own time, like Mike Tyson did. You know, when he sees Floyd Money Mayweather doing stuff. We can do that. We can draw a line in the sand and stand up to be counted and make the most of what remains of our lives. That's option number one. But option number two, we can succumb to the past failure or to the past success. We can dim our lights. We can check out of life and we can say, you know, it has happened. There's nothing you can do about the life. After all, there's nothing you can do about it. Those are only two options. Let me tell you, those two options are being taken up in life every waking day. But I will encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, to take up the first option, to take up inspiration and draw a line in the sand and say, this is day zero of my life. And this is what we're doing philosophically, of course. This is day zero of my life. And from this day going forward, I am going to have this and this and this and this done, and I'm going to live my best life ever. I'm going to look at my life in terms of my relationships. I'm going to have my best in my relationships. I'm going to look at my life in terms of my work. I'm going to expend my best in terms of my work. I'm going to add excellence in terms of my work. What has happened in the past half of my life or 3/4 of my life has absolutely nothing. I cannot do anything about that, but I can do something, even if it's just one day left out of my life. Like I told you, there's a professor, by the way, who was living at 60 years of age. He was doing absolutely amazing things. He was dancing, he was having a ball, he was teaching people, and then he was diagnosed with a disease called ALS. Actually, this is documented in a book called Tuesdays with Maury by a guy, I've forgotten his name. But Tuesdays with Maury, if you can Google that book, you'll find that book. It's a true life story. Actually, this professor was even interviewed on some big time television show. He made a decision. He had two options. When this disease was wasting his life, he said he's gonna make the best out of what remains of his life and not check out of it. So those are the two options that we have in life. And tomorrow I'm going to start discussing some of the remedies that we can come up with and some of the inspirations that we can come up with when we feel like we are gauging ourselves against someone and they are doing much better than we are. So stay tuned to that, and bye-bye. A special shout out to my mentor Jeffrey Howard of Visionary Business University, found at mastermindmentor.com, who has graciously provided me with the soundtrack and the introductory track to this podcast. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.